Welcome to the Book Faire Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have a collection of new releases, a book banning bill that has been introduced on the federal level, and one community stands in opposition of book bans proposed by a former substitute teacher. Coming up this Friday, we will have an interview with author and illustrator duo Mac Barnett and Carson Ellis. Let's get started with a look at new releases, starting with Loops, written and illustrated by Jashar Awan. Via artwork that evokes the peppy boldness of vintage screen-printed posters and a horizontal format that turns learning to be a kid into a full stage show. Awan zeroes in on a common milestone on the wobbly path to maturation. A determined child sporting a teal hoodie that frames their orange skin and black hair navigates the pride and peril of wearing their first pair of big kid shoes, red sneakers with laces. Trouble is, those laces keep coming undone, and bought with room to grow, the untied kicks are inclined to slip off. But the young narrator refuses to dwell on frustration, breaking the fourth wall with indomitable enthusiasm to demonstrate lace tying and other steadiness in the face of setbacks. Quote, "It's okay, I'm still learning," end quote. Memories of earlier victories, managing to swing without a push, conquering the tall slide, tackling the merry-go-round with ease, all bolster the child's self-assurance in this confidence-boosting work about the monumental nature of early accomplishments. This book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next is The Unlikely Tale of Chase and Finnegan by Jasmine Warga. In this tale of animal friendship and found family by Warga, a rescue dog befriends an orphaned cheetah cub as part of a zoo's conservation program. When her mother abruptly dies, Chase is left alone as the only cheetah in the facility. Meanwhile, Pooch Finnegan, discovered lost and injured in the woods, is adopted by sympathetic humans, one of whom is the zoo's lead cheetah trainer. After Finnegan recovers, he's partnered with Chase as a cheetah ambassador dog. Following an initial adjustment period, the two young animals become inseparable friends, with Finnegan giving Chase much-needed confidence and companionship. In return, Chase provides steadfast comfort for Finnegan, who struggles to manage his fear of storms and abandonment. The Animalian protagonists' spare dual third-person POVs present a charming story that examines human and animal interactions by centering the growing emotional bond between Chase and Finnegan, as well as their human handlers. Drawing inspiration from similar real-life programs, per an author's note, Warga offers an accessible point of entry for curious animal lovers, culminating in a compassionate work that additionally addresses issues of anxiety and trauma. Background human characters are racially diverse, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is Dragon Girl and the Awakened Flames by Jenny Moore. Moore spins together laugh-out-loud humor, heartfelt friendship, and classic fantasy adventure energy in a sparkling series launch. Hidden in a cave in the Witchingford Wood, Emba Oak, who has yellow hazel eyes and glittering scales along her arms and legs, lives a quiet life with her adoptive mother, Fred, the keeper of the prophecy-filled volume Tome of Terrible Tomorrows, and Odolph Bravebuckle, a former blacksmith's assistant turned hero in training. Emba's world is upended when a dragon only she can see appears, revealing that the dragon sighting portends the arrival of a villainous dragon-obsessed necromancer, Necromalcolm. Fred informs her charge that the sorcerer has been hunting Emba, believing that she's a prophesized dragon girl. When Fred is kidnapped by Necromalcolm, the youths embark on a rescue mission armed with courage, friendship, and magical objects they obtain along their journey. Radiant prose crackles with expert comedic timing and clever wordplay, while retaining the gravity of the narrative's tender emotional undercurrents. Emba's wrestling with identity and destiny, Odolph's charmingly clumsy yet sincere heroics and Fred's steady guidance ground the frenetic energy of an all-out fun story about the power of chosen family. The protagonists are described as having pale skin, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 13. Our next title is Redstones, a graphic account of the Salvadorian Civil War by Ernest Sade. Drawing from first-hand accounts, Sade crafts a visceral non-fiction graphic novel about the Salvadorian Civil War as experienced by 12-year-old protagonist Miriam. Alternating between his interviews with adult Miriam in 2021 and the subject's childhood in 1980 Santa Marta, the creator first details his traveling to El Salvador to visit Miriam, who greets him with a hearty meal and a warm smile. Soon after, Sade prompts the woman to begin telling her story, starting with the day she received her first pair of shoes. The protagonist recalls being a fast runner, a valuable skill in war-torn El Salvador. Speed ensured she evaded capture by government soldiers as she delivered food and messages to nearby guerrilla fighters. Time cards highlight the passing months, until in March 1981, bombings prompt Miriam and her family to evacuate to a nearby village. But as conditions worsen, many El Salvadorians, including Miriam, cross the Lempa River to Honduras, and though men employ guerrilla tactics to hold off pursuing soldiers, Miriam is soon caught in a bloody riverside attack. Simple paneling and cinematic plot beats convey a moving story of war and displacement, set against a lushy rendered jungle backdrop with starlit night skies. Back matter includes additional historical information, maps, and photographs. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. And the final title to look at this week is Estella Undrowning by debut author Renee Peña Govea. A high school senior determines to make space for herself as she grapples with racism, injustice, and precarity. As one of the few Latinx students at her exclusive San Francisco school, 17-year-old Estella feels pressure to excel academically. But her Spanish class, taught by a prejudiced white instructor, could jeopardize all her hard work. Simmering racial tensions escalate when Estella's non-Latinx classmate enters and wins a Latine Heritage Poetry Contest, inspiring student protests citing the school's long-standing atmosphere of impeding Black and brown teens' abilities to make safe spaces for themselves. Estella's stress compounds when her family's landlord threatens eviction. Simultaneously, she explores a romantic relationship with a fellow student, a bright spot that folds humor into tense plotting. As Estella contends with complex questions regarding love and sexuality, identity, and how to use her voice to enact change, she comes to understand the value of imperfection and growth. Realizations perceptively conveyed via empathetic and personable narration, as well as nuanced interactions among the intersectionally diverse cast. Estella's sharp poetry interspersed throughout offers intimate glimpses into her shifting thoughts, feelings, and doubts. It's both a poignant reflection on young adulthood and joyful celebration of adolescence that challenges stereotypes and engenders hope. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. Next, we'll be taking a look at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Faire podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at Book Faire Pod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early, as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Faire podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Let's take a look at some headlines, starting with a state representative in Texas sounding the alarm as a local school district is facing ongoing budget difficulties. Judson ISD in Texas has seen several school closures amid a $37 million deficit. The closure of Judson Middle School was approved with a 6-0 unanimous vote by the Judson ISD School Board. Along with Judson Middle School, the district is also closing Rolling Meadows Elementary, Franz Leadership Academy, and Park Village Elementary. The closing schools served a combined 2,500 students that are now being displaced to other schools in the district. Along with the closure, parents are having to find other schools to enroll their children and arrange transportation for students that rely on public or school bus routes. At Judson Middle School alone, 480 students also walk to school. Now those parents need to figure out how to get their children to a new school on top of other logistical problems with transferring. Funding and closures are not the only problem facing Judson ISD. Robert Jacklick has been appointed as interim superintendent for the district by a 5-1 vote from the board, becoming the fourth person to hold the position in only a month. The previous interim superintendent, Milton Robb Fields III, was terminated in February in a split 4-3 vote. The board claimed that Fields was to be on administrative leave pending the conclusion of the legal process required by the Texas Educational Code, but could not share any details of the ongoing investigation. And now, State Representative Barbara Gervin Hawkins spoke at a recent board meeting after receiving numerous complaints from her constituents. Quote, "Things are not going well for any of us. There's been 4 superintendents in 4 weeks, so that tells you alone there's some nefarious activity going on." End quote. One parent even said they will be removing both of their children from the district now that the board has chosen to close down several schools. Next, a nationwide book ban has been introduced in the House of Representatives. House Resolution 7761, also called the Stop the Sexualization of Children Act, has been filed in the United States House of Representatives. The bill would modify the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 by prohibiting the use of funds to, quote, develop, implement, facilitate, host, or promote any program activity for, or to provide or promote literature or other materials to children under the age of 18 that includes sexually oriented material and for other purposes, end quote. The bill, introduced and co-signed by 18 conservative members of Congress, is also an anti-trans bill, including text relating to material related to gender dysphoria or what the bill calls transgenderism. One aspect of the bill includes an exception for titles in classic literature pointing to a specific article published by Compass Classroom. Compass Classroom is a resource for homeschooling students, and the front page of their website says, quote, teaching your kids to think biblically about the world with our video courses, end quote. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution says, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, end quote. While H.R. 7761 has been referred to the House Committee on Education and Workforce, there has yet to be a vote on the bill. Given the text clearly endorsing a religiously based organization such as Compass Classroom, under the Establishment Clause there is no way this bill should be allowed to pass. If you are interested in sharing your opinions, check out house.gov to find your representative and learn how to contact them. Next, New Hampshire House Republicans have pushed through a bill named after Charlie Kirk, banning CRT and gender ideology instruction in schools. House Bill 1792, also called the Charlie Act, would allow New Hampshire schools to focus on core academics and give parents the ability to hold schools accountable, according to House Majority Leader Jason Osborne. Quote, a vote for the Charlie Act is a vote for parents, a vote for academic excellence, a vote for the basic idea that schools should teach reading, writing, and arithmetic and leave the rest to their families." End quote. The Charlie Act would ban curriculum such as critical race theory or LGBTQ+ ideology from being used as teaching models in classrooms, as well as allowing parents to bring civil lawsuits against schools and teachers who go against the law. Proponents of the bill claim that such indoctrination is already happening in New Hampshire schools. The bill passed the House along strict party lines, with Democratic representatives standing in opposition of HB 1792. Representative Lauren Selig said, quote, "Teachers in New Hampshire are not indoctrinating students into Marxism or any other political ideology. As a former teacher, if I could indoctrinate my students, it would have been to shower and show up with their homework." End quote. HB 1792 now moves into the Senate, with the chairman of the House Finance Committee waiving the option to review the bill. The Charlie Act is a purely performative bill with vague language that targets every boogeyman that its namesake fearmongered over. A previous bill in New Hampshire was struck down in 2021 that specifically targeted critical race theory, and with a Republican majority in the state Senate, it's safe to assume that the Charlie Act will pass before being blocked by the courts shortly after being enacted. From the negative news in New Hampshire to some brief positive news from Iowa, with several bills dying in committee. House File 2309, a measure restricting material harmful to minors, has stalled in the House Judiciary Committee. It would have prevented harmful materials from being accessed by patrons under the age of 18 without parental consent. The bill went through subcommittee earlier in February, but was not included in the agenda for the House Judiciary Committee. This means it will not be brought up for a vote on the House floor until the committee reviews it. Other bills, including Senate File 2177 and 2119, also made administrative rule changes to block minors from accessing materials, as well as removing existing exceptions in Iowa's obscenity laws for libraries and schools, a common practice meant to protect access to literature and sexual health instruction materials for schools and libraries. Our final story comes from Idaho, where one censorship advocate is met with a community standing in opposition. Sierra Clark, a recently fired substitute teacher in Twin Falls School District, is also the founder of a local chapter of Moms for Liberty. Clark has been the sole challenger of nearly 100 titles across the school district. Of the challenged titles, only 2 have actually been removed. Clark claims that nearly all of the book challenges are based on sexual content that is inappropriate for children. The district's policy requires 3 parents, 3 teachers, and 3 staff members each to review a challenged book. And so the large amount of challenges by Clark have led to a lot of time wasted by volunteers in the review committees. Superintendent Brady Dickinson has served as superintendent for the Twin Falls School District for 10 years, and in that time has only seen 1 book challenge before Clark began her vindictive spree in December. The district's policy was not designed for so many titles to be reviewed at one time, and the superintendent worried that they wouldn't find volunteers for the review process. However, the public relations director for the district has said that so far 81 staff members and 65 parents have stepped up to fill roles in book review committees and are reading challenged books. Members of Indivisible Twin Falls County, Idaho, put out a call to action asking for local members of the community to show up for a school board meeting in opposition to the local Moms for Liberty chapter. This will conclude another episode of the Book Faire Podcast. Coming this Friday, we have an interview with author and illustrator duo Mac Barnett and Carson Ellis for their newest book, an adaptation of Rumpelstiltskin. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening, or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Book Faire Pod. If you'd like to help the Book Faire Podcast grow, you can go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Faire Podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.